Thank you.
Judgment, our coach, our friend, looking forward to it.
Thanks for coming today. What I'd like to ask is how many here today are in sales or want to be in sales or want to sell something? How many are looking on how to define the value for their product or service? Okay, great. Anyway, what I want to talk to you today about is value. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll think value, value, value. And if you can't understand, discover value, and push that throughout your whole sales cycle, you're not going to be successful. Just some background for me. I spent over 10 years at Convergys. There I learned a lot about value. We had experts come in and teach us how to do product management and marketing, and it all got down to the key thing was knowing your customer's application and how you create value from that. In the industrial area, I worked for DuBois Chemicals for 5 years. I was national sales manager for Sweco, a division of Emerson Electric, for 5 years. I also worked for X-Tech for a couple of years. So really good background in industrial as well as the Convergys type software markets. Also, I spent over 10 years in building materials. I was product manager for Clopay Corporation, had a $40 million product line selling to retailers and installing distributors. Also worked for Schulte Corporation, which manufactures shelving, wire shelving for residential construction. And also worked 5 years for American Building Components that manufacture metal building panels, and also this chimney guard product, which I have a little story to tell you there about value and how to discover value. What I'm going to talk about today a little bit is a full customer lifecycle management system. And that is, how do you target and acquire customers? How do you target those that have the highest propensity to purchase and have hopefully the highest lifetime value? Then how do you serve them, and how do you serve them efficiently and effectively? And then how do you retain them? And then how do you grow them through upsell and cross-sell? But today, we're just going to focus on the target and acquire component of the customer lifecycle. And there's a lot to talk about. You have on your table here just kind of like an overview of that. And we'll go through each one of these segments of the customer So the first component is, how do you identify targets? One interesting thing, I have a client here at HCDC, actually he's in the room, and he has a valve, it's a high resolution sanitary valve, and when he started here he had no customers, no link to the outer world, and he set up a really good website. He applied some search engine optimization to that, and now he has customers all over the world asking for his product. And one thing I found, not just through Brad's experience, but also when I was with another company, Fleximation, I was amazed at how many engineers source of contact with suppliers. And I would imagine that Fleximation, for example, we probably got 30% of our leads from engineers that were out searching the web. So it's a great source of leads. The next is trade shows. I don't know how many of you have been to trade shows, but it's really a great source of leads. A lot of times your cost per lead's high, but what research shows is that 92% of people that go to trade shows are there looking for new products. So if you're a new startup company and you're looking for for new customers, that's a great place to be. The other one is trade magazine lists. I was doing a special project for a company, a screw parts manufacturer, and they wanted to get into tier 1, tier 2 automotive manufacturers. And anyway, what I was able to do is I found a list of the top 100 Tier 1 and Tier 2 manufacturers, and it was great because I was able to, as we're in my territory, I covered the northeast part of Michigan, which is where all the Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers were, and I identified them, and then I said, okay, now that is that, like, D&B has great LinkedIn Navigator that runs around $60 a month. That's a good place to go and find people that might be able to buy your product. But one of the things that I found is called Zoom Info. I don't know if you ever heard of that project, and it is fantastic. You can go in there and put an SIC code in, or you can query different things, and it'll give you a list of all the companies in that space, and then you can drill down to the companies and people within those companies and get their email address and phone numbers. It's a very, very valuable tool. One of the negatives is it runs about $100 a month, but I'll tell you, it can be invaluable. And when I was doing consulting, I leveraged many times back. Then there's buyer's guides. An example, guide, and it gave me all the home centers in the country, the key buyers, and it has other guides too for pharmacies or convenience stores. It's a good source if you're going to the retail market. The other one is sales representatives. If you have the luxury of having direct sales reps, my advice is find somebody that has experience in that industry. They have the contacts, they have the relationships, they can return a lot to you. The other way to go is to go with manufacturers reps for direct sales force. And manufacturers reps generally have been in business 5-10 years. They know all the marketplace. They can bring you quickly to the key people in their region. Now, one of the things that I didn't realize until later is that sales representatives not only provide contacts they have, but they usually represent maybe 10 companies in addition to yours, and they're getting leads from their principals. So even though I didn't have money to advertise, all of their other principals were advertising and bringing them into clients that could use my product. So that it's like a double benefit of using manufacturers reps. And then there's referrals. One of the things that I found very effective is finding out in your distribution who are some products that are associated with your product. And when I was doing work with Fleximation, we had a conveyor that fed parts to robots. Or created good relationships with different robot manufacturers that would provide me leads. That was very, very helpful. There's kind of like a step between you get from, okay, I have that name, I have the contact, I have their email address. The hardest thing to do in sales is get your foot in the door. And this is where it takes creativity. For example, one of the things that I have done, I have been working to find investors. So what I've been doing is we identified some key targets that we wanted to get to, and I did a number of things. One company, I called the president of a $500 million company on the phone, and he answered it. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be easy. So then the next process was I usually would try to contact the president of the company, and I'd get an administrative assistant. Well, that worked out really well because what I did is I asked the administrative assistant if I could send them a one-pager that they could pass on to the president or whoever they needed to pass it on to. And I said, in order to do that, you need to send me your email address or give me your email address so I can forward it to you. So I do that with the hope that, yeah, they'd forward it up. But if I didn't hear anything back in a couple days, I would then, I figured out the email pattern within that company, and then I sent it directly to the president. But one thing that I found really works well is that you have to have like a one-pager or pictures that you can send out that easily capture and explain what you're about. That's the same thing when I was trying to get into Tier 1 and Tier 2 automotive suppliers. And the key thing there is that I sent like two pictures with some words on it. You know, here's who we are, what we do, and here's pictures of our parts. And that allowed me to kind of, when I did call, they knew who I was and what I represented. So it's just a matter of trying to present some value up front before you make that call. 'Cause nobody's going to take your call if they don't know who you are or what you're about. In terms, now that you're trying, you're getting into the account, you need to build that relationship. And you need to build that relationship from two sides. One is you want to build a personal relationship, and you want to build a business relationship. The personal relationship is things like knowing, your buyers' kids. What do they do? Are they in soccer? Or what sports teams do they follow? And when you go in there on a repetitive basis, you talk about that, and you're building that personal relationship. But the key thing that you have to do from a business relationship is listen. Don't talk, but listen. And you need to, just try to uncover what their problems and issues are. What do they need help with? And if you do that, you'll win. But to give you an example of that, when I was marketing the Chimney Guard program, I started as a new products manager. I was given a box with 20 parts in it, aluminum parts, that the consumer or installer was supposed to put together and then put on the chimney. Well, I thought, that's not and they were selling through HVAC companies. I thought, that's not the right market. And so I said, I'm going after the home center market. And I called almost every home center buyer in the United States. But before I did that, I sent them my product, and I discussed the features of my product. They said, well, first of all, it has to be fully assembled. You can't send somebody all these parts. They're not going to want to mess around with that. And then they said, and by the way, your product's aluminum finish. It needs to be black. And it can't be aluminum, it has to be steel. So I kept on learning about things that it should be. And then finally, and then one thing that I was amazed at, I don't know if anybody ever heard it, Rinks Discount Department Stores. Well, they're like 2 levels below Walmart. And anyway, I had worked there as a kid, and I said, I went and talked to the buyer, and he said, wow, make sure that when you put your packaging together, that it's 4-color. And like 4-color boxes were not that popular back then. And it said, it has to be 4-color to attract attention. And then it needs to tell the consumer what it is and what it does. So I had a chimney cap, picture of a chimney cap on my box, and then I had what it does. It keeps out birds, bats, squirrels, rain, and so forth. So anyway, I thought, man, that sounded great, even though it was from somebody from a very, minor or not well-renowned home center. So then the big thing was when I went to Kmart, one of my reps had a good relationship with Kmart. So we went in there and talked to the buyer at Kmart, and he goes, wow, if you could create a one-size-fits-all chimney cap, it would solve all my problems. I'm having so much problems with inventory. So I went back to my management. I said, okay, here's what I'm hearing in the marketplace. I need this, 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 and this. And they said, okay. So they hired a design engineer, and he created a design for a one-size-fits-all chimney cap. So anyway, we were able to get that product out to market. I ended up selling Kmart $1 million worth of chimney guards the first year. And as the president of the like when I was interviewing for other jobs after that, I said to the president of the company, I said, when they call you, can you tell them what I did with the chimney guard? He goes, no, but I'll tell them you saved the effing company. So anyway, that was a very good experience, and it taught me the value of really contacting your customers and understanding what their needs are. In terms of understanding value in a general sense, you need to make sure that you understand the strategic, operational, and functional needs of that customer. The strategic is like, how does it fulfill strategic direction or help their balance sheet or whatever. And then from an operational effective operation. And then from a functional standpoint, the user of that product or service, does it make their job easier? Is it ergonomic? You know, how are you meeting the functional needs? So if you take your customers and you understand the value proposition at all these levels, you're going to be more successful. Again, what value do you provide for all the levels? The other thing that if you walk into an account and you don't understand like the parts of their solution or the terminology, you're going to lose credibility. So you really have to build that. Some of the types of knowledge your customers are, you should know what as much as you can about that particular customer. At the same time, you need to know situational knowledge around them. What's going on in the marketplace? How do they fit into the market? And how can you talk what's going on in the industry? You can get a lot of credibility by having knowledge. The other thing is technical competency. This varies by product, but for example, when I was at Sweco, our salespeople were generally engineers. They had engineering degrees. They understood processes. They weren't just selling our piece of equipment. They were selling how you get the powder to the separator or whatever. So competency more so in an engineered type product like that. And then you want to bring fresh ideas and insight. And I think the chimney guard program that I just told you was very insightful. And even when I was at trade shows after that, my competitors used to come up to me and say, man, that was unbelievable what you were able to accomplish as a new company in the marketplace. But it was a matter, again, of providing new insight to the industry. And then benchmarking data. A good example of that, when I was at Vergis, we had a $3 million garage door account. It was Furrows, actually. And they were like upset because all their inventories were all messed up. They didn't know how they were going. I mean, they were just having a tough time having the right product in stock. Well, I was lucky enough to know that there was benchmarking data out there that would tell you what types of types of garage doors were sold in different regions. So I took this data to them, and we were able to rebalance their inventories. But we basically saved them from getting out of garage doors altogether and, of course, losing a $3 million account. But benchmarking data can be very good and make you look like an expert. And in addition to that, you need to be aligned with your customer's buying process. You need to know and make sure that you have the ability to influence them. Make sure that your sales process is aligned with your customer's buying process. For example, if you have a capital goods item, you better be talking to your customer and October, November, December to get that spec into the next year's budget. If you're talking about a product that is a fall product like a chimney guard, you need to make sure that you're selling in January and February and getting that order at that time, because that's when it happens. If you try to sell it in August, you're too late. Same thing like sprinklers. That's a spring item, so you want to make sure that you're selling that in October or November. Then again, we talked about resolving the needs of the strategic, operational, and functional levels of the company and align with how your customer measures success. This is something I learned at a sales guy that worked for IBM. He was one of our sales reps at Convergys. And I've used this for forever in terms of weighing what I'm accomplishing for my customer. How do I help them increase revenue? How do I help them decrease cost? Or how do I help them improve customer satisfaction? These are all things that you need to focus on. And another thing that kind of fits with this too is the training when I was at Convergys. And there is that you need to know the application of your customer. You need to know that inside and out. And one thing, like Brad Thompson sitting in the back there that's Resolution Air, I said, Brad, you're so lucky because if a customer calls in about your valve, you know how to answer that. And if it's not the right thing, you know how to design something to meet their needs. It's a great place to be. But if you can work know what it is and how you're helping them solve their issue, that's the best place. The other thing that kind of reinforces this, I had the opportunity this summer to work with one of my clients that had a UC technology that got us into an I-Course program, which is basically a lean model process that they walked us through. And this is one of the statements out of there, and I think it hits strong. Is a strong direct value proposition for a well-defined customer segment is the biggest indicator of success. And again, it gets down to value. Then you need to understand your competitive environment. And one way that you can do this is rank what's most important to your clients. What are the features and benefits or things that they're looking for? And rank how you match that versus your competitors. Another way of doing that is do a SWOT analysis. And what's your strength, opportunities, and threats? Understand your competition and know you fit into that. And at the end, you need to be able to say, unlike the competition, our solution will. If you can't say that, you might want to move on. So then in terms of demoing, this is a critical part. And in the demoing, how do you present the value? I've seen a lot of demos or customer presentations that start out with a really great presentation, and then they have the product demoed, and it's not focused. It's not like, when you do demos, especially software demos, you got to make sure that everything you say and do on there shows some value to your purchasing customer. As I said here, is that you need to produce an outline that focuses each step of that demo. One of the things that I've found with demos, the more real you can make them, the better. When I was with Fleximation, what we did is, when a customer would contact us, we'd tell them to send the parts in, and we put them on our feeder, and we had a robot there, and we'd show them how many parts per minute they could pick and how it worked. So we were able to demo without even stepping into their facility. And we sold hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment without even leaving our facility because they could see by the video that it was very effective. Another thing that I saw very effective is, again, making it as live as you can. A lot of times when you go into sales calls, you don't have much time. You know, I used to always ask people for like 15 to 20 minutes of their time, and if they like it, you end up there an hour. But what I had is I had an iPad, and I had the videos of how our product worked on that. And when I went in, a lot of times you're in a corner somewhere talking to somebody, but I was able to just show them very quickly with the iPad, well, here's what our product does. And so demos are very important in terms of showing value. Then, of course, writing the proposal, you know, define the current situation or problem, define the goals of your proposal, define the key deliverables. The big thing here is, what are your qualifications? You know, how can you do that better than a competition, and define the benefits, and of course, payment terms. Now, this is a very important part. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to go through the proposal with my client, but you got to make sure that you get buy-in on each thing that you're presenting, so that when you get to the end, okay, you said this, 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 and this, and then, you know, call for action. You agreed to all these things, right? You know, so can we move forward with a purchase order? So, and then you'll find objections, but the more confirmation you can get through that proposal delivery process, the better. Then you get to the negotiation of it. And I found that, you know, purchasing agents make a living by cutting whatever you proposed. So my solution to that was always have more in my back pocket that I could give away, and it wasn't going to affect my margins. And especially in the retail space, there's always asked for discounts or whatever. Some of the responses can be just be early exclusion. I can't do that. Like in the automotive, and that wasn't from the day that it was working in the factory. So I mean, that's a huge drain on cash. So we would usually just exclude that right up front. But you know, there are ways to provide it for what I need to make the money I need. I'd have to be at $21.99. Well, but I need to be at $19.99 if we're going to promote this thing. I said, okay, I'll offer you a $2 per unit rebate, you know, if a consumer rebate, knowing that only 10% of those get turned in. So I was able to meet his need and at the same time maintain my margin. So there's always, you know, a way to look at that. Another example of that, this is kind of funny. This one customer wanted to be like a distributor and be able to sell OEMs at a very reasonable price. So they wanted a 20% discount, and that was unheard of. So I said, I talked to the owner of the company. So what we worked out is, okay, you pay us, and this was a $125,000 order. You pay us cash up front, and we'll give you that discount. Believe it or not, they did it. It was amazing. But it's always good to try to you know, get something else in return if you have to concede. And then there's go over all these, but this website I found was very, very good in terms of describing some manipulative negotiation tactics. And, you know, like negotiation decoys, where they put things in there that they really don't care about, so they can give them up to get you to give up things. And cherry picking, they'll say, well, this guy's offering this, and you're not offering that. But they're just taking the best of other people's proposals and trying to get you to provide the same. Well, you didn't know that I offered A, B, C, and D that they don't have. But anyway, cherry picking is one. But you can go to this website, and I'd advise it if you're negotiation. It's a good thing. And by the way, when you're doing negotiations, you need to make sure that you plan, prepare, and practice. You have to know and buyer going to be coming from and how do I respond. But know up front what your aspiration base is, but what are you really willing to accept. And know what your this is very powerful because you know that you with walking away from an opportunity and not get into their negotiation thing where you're destroying your margins or whatever. And then focus on interests, not positions. If you focus on what your customer wants to accomplish, that's the best thing to do, not just what products or services they're trying to achieve. So again, it's getting to understanding their needs better. Again, we talked about use trade-offs and without a trade-off for that. And why people don't buy. It says here, no money, typically have money but don't see the value. Or they don't have the time, but typically they have the time but just don't see the value of spending time with you. They don't have the need. And this is the worst problem to try to overcome. Either you or they just don't have a need. Or there's no urgency. You must not have shown the pure loss or gain if they don't have a sense of urgency. Or there's no trust. And we talked about building credibility and trust up front. But all these come down to value. It's value, value, value. What value am I my customer? One of the best things is once you close that sale is to make sure you make sure you continue a relationship with your customer to the point where they feel comfortable enough in being a reference for you. A reference is very, very powerful and can help you a lot.